but I think you'll be very happy to hear what he has to talk about. Ethan?
Thank you. I've spoken a lot in different places, and it's still nerve-wracking everywhere I go. But it's not something that I'm really used to yet. I don't know how many people here have seen Collateral Murder that was released by WikiLeaks back in 2010. For those of you who haven't, it was a video that was released by Chelsea Manning, who now is been sentenced to 35 years in prison for releasing the video amongst some other cables and stuff. Basically, for doing what was right, Chelsea Manning now sits in prison in Fort Leavenworth for 35 years. And me personally, I think Chelsea Manning is a hero, someone who put their neck out there. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. As far as the media and stuff, they like to take out take out everything that Chelsea did and use her sexuality or something against her, and to damage her what she did for what she did for us, and for that I'm thankful. And we had a connection beforehand. Right when this video was released, before anybody knew that it was her that released the video, I got a friend request on Facebook. And it was from Bradley Manning. And I didn't put two and two together. I didn't have any idea of who it was. And then when the arrest came out, and across the TV flashed Bradley Manning has been arrested, I said, that name sounds familiar. And I went and looked on my Facebook page, and sure enough, it was. And then here's my name in the chat logs between Bradley and Adrian Lamo. But yeah, so it started from there. And when I saw the video in 2010, it was the first time I had seen the video. I tried to put that day behind me and not think about it as much, to stop maybe the nightmares that I was having. It didn't help. But I dropped my children off at school and went home like I do every morning, grabbed a cup of coffee and sat down and turned on the news. And the very first image, and I kid you not, the very first image that came across was me running across the screen carrying a child in my arms. And, the first thing I did is I called my wife, who we were just dating at the time, and I was furious. I didn't know why. I was more angry with the fact that I felt it was being thrown back into my face, because this is a day that, I have nightmares about. This is the day that I scream at my children about sometimes, that I just get angry and scream at no one for. And here it was being flashed on the screen, and all these talking heads are on the news, generals who haven't been to war, saying, "Oh no, this is warranted. This is exactly what was needed in that time." Well, no, it wasn't. And then I hear all these commentaries back and forth via like Facebook or any other social media site that everybody's fighting over whether or not there were weapons there or what the people were doing there. Well. So I wanted to set out, and along with another member of my unit, Josh Stieber, we wanted to set up the record straight and let everybody know that, whether or not they had weapons or not is beside the point. We were in their country illegally, and I would do the same thing if I was them. And this is the way I put it: if I kicked in your door in the middle of the night and I shot your son in the face and told you need to be happy for it, and this is freedom and democracy, what are you going to do? Are you going to thank me for it? Or are you going to pick up a weapon and fight me or anybody else who looks like me? Well, most people are going to do the latter. And were there weapons there? Yeah, but it's Iraq. There's weapons everywhere. 2 journalists were killed that day. And when I came up onto the scene, I saw the group of men on the corner who had been completely annihilated by these 30-millimeter rounds. And the first thing I remember is hearing, it sounded like my own daughter screaming out for me. And it's stuck in my head because, my daughter, she does the squeals and stuff like that, and she's 11 now, but she was the same age as this child when this happened. And my son was born approximately a month before this happened, and I hadn't yet seen him. But so I went up to the van where the screams were coming from, and they weren't screams of a child who was in pain. It was the screams that you would, in the middle of the night, hear from your daughter who's in a nightmare and wanting dad to come hold her. And so as I'm going up to this van, again, that has been completely obliterated by these 30 millimeter rounds from the Apaches. I go up there with a bunch of soldiers, and one of my soldiers turns around and starts vomiting and runs away. And we were told not to touch these children. They were future terrorists, let them die. Now, this was not a one-time incident. Things like this had been happening since I got there in February of that year, of 2007. And I don't know, a part of me just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't. The training that we received in basic training was that the entire state was the enemy. Iraq, it didn't matter if you were a woman or child, you were the enemy. We were given orders for 360-degree rotational fire anytime we were hit by an IED, which was to kill every man, woman, child in the street anytime we were hit by an IED. And the whole idea behind this was to out-terrorize the terrorists, make the population more afraid of us than they were of the militia. And in a sense, it worked. And then in a sense, it didn't, because it created more people who were against us once we killed their grandmother who was just coming back from the store. But like I said, this incident wasn't a few bad apples who were straying from the system. This was a system that we're trained to. It's how we're supposed to act, as soldiers. We ran to cadences that talked about going to the market and killing everybody. When we were told that we were going to Iraq for the hearts and minds of the people of Iraq, our unit came up with 2 in the hearts, 1 in the mind. Shoot them twice in the head, once in the chest. And so that's what basically we were trained to be terrorists. And that's what we did when we got to Iraq, is we terrorized everyone. And so I'd been seeing this going on, and I was quite a bit older than most of the people in my unit. They were all around 20, 21, 22, 23, and here I am, 31 years old. I already had children. I already had a little bit of empathy in me. And as I'm watching this, for the most part, I was standing back because I didn't want to get shot by my own people for becoming a whistleblower or saying, hey, don't do this, this is wrong, because they treat you like crap when you do that. I watched it happen to Josh Stieber, who became a conscientious objector while we were over there. He refused to fire his weapon. They beat him up. They did what they called wall-to-wall counseling. And they made him do every crap job that they could find. And Josh Stieber did it with a smile on his face all day long, because he was not going to be a part of this. Well, so I came up to the van, and I looked inside, and what I saw was a 4-year-old girl who had a wound to the belly, and she had glass in her hair and in her eyes. And I remember her eyes looking at me, because they were ghostly white. They seemed to look right past me. I mean, she was covered in blood, and all I could really see were the white eyes. And they looked right past me, and my heart sank, and I knew that I had to do something. But next to her on the floorboard, with his head resting on the bench seat, was her brother, who was about 7 or 8 years old. And he had a wound to his head, and he looked like he wasn't breathing. The father, who I assumed was the father, in the driver's seat, I assumed he was the father because of the way he was hunched over them, trying to protect them. And me being a father, I would have done the same thing. And that father saved his children for the most part. But there was no way that he had survived. Again, I was told not to mess with these children, and I refused orders, and I grabbed the little girl, and I took her to the house behind the van, where there was a man hiding in his kitchen from all the gunfire. And I asked him to get us a bucket of water, and I took the gloves off, and I washed the blood from her hair, washed the glass from her hair, took my gloves off, picked the glass from her eyes so that she could close them. And when there was nothing else I could do, that I made sure there was no exit wound or anything, just just to make sure that she wasn't shot in the stomach, that it was shrapnel. So I handed her off to the medic, and the medic ran her to the Bradley vehicle that was waiting. I then went back outside. We were told to take pictures of the scene, and I walked up to the van, and I took one picture, which was the boy laying there and the father hunched over him. And when I was looking through the viewfinder of my camera, it looked like the boy took a breath. And I put the camera down and I looked, and just to make sure, and sure enough, he took like another labored breath. And so I started screaming out that the boy's alive, the boy's alive. And I grabbed him in my arms, and I started running as fast as I could to the Bradley, hoping that it wasn't leaving yet. While I was running with him, I kept telling him, and I was holding him like my own child, and telling him, don't die, I have you, everything's going to be okay. And he opened his eyes and he looked at me, and it was just for a split second, and his eye rolled back into the back of his head. And if you watch the video, you can see I stopped running and start walking, and it's because I thought he died in my arms right then. And that was a hard moment for me, because these were not the first children that my unit had shot. These were not the first children that I had seen dead. I watched a Bradley vehicle destroy a van full of children, and as the Iraqi police were pulling children parts out of the van, they were just looking at us like, what are you, animals? And here we are saying that the Iraqis were animals. And when I laid the boy in the Bradley with the medics, my platoon leader was there, and he yelled at me and said, what are you doing? You need to quit worrying about these MFing children and pull security. At that point I was, okay, I did what I can. So I went up and I pulled security, but the entire time I just couldn't stop thinking about what we were doing there. I'd already started to question what we were doing in Iraq. And I guess from growing up the way I had, my family was very, patriotic. It was our duty to serve in the military. I joined right after September 11th because I felt I could no longer enjoy the freedoms that I was enjoying without putting my life on the line. And so I joined, and I fell into the whole patriotism, wanting to go over there, and how dare Muslims do this to us on September 11th. And my biggest thing is I wanted to go over there and I wanted to shoot Muslims in the face because of what they did. And not knowing that, what I was getting myself into. So I got over to Iraq, and again, pretty quickly I started to realize that I had more in common with the average farmer in Iraq than I did with the people who sent me to war. These were men who loved their families, were doing everything they can in a time that we were destroying their entire lives. We're still holding their families together. We're still maintaining some kind of normalcy within their homes, even with bombs going off next to them. And I started to find myself respecting these men a lot more than I respected myself. And so like I said, I could no longer, I think what I did when I saved those children is I just wanted to save some piece of my soul from watching everything else that was happening there. I just wanted to save some piece of my soul so that I could sleep at night. Because I was getting angry. I yelled at my soldiers every day. I yelled at my family back home when I talked to them on the phone. I was angry with everyone. I was angry with the civilians back home for allowing us to go over there. But more so I was angry with myself with what I allowed myself to become. I allowed myself to become something that I never thought I'd become, and that was a terrorist. I became a terrorist in Iraq. Now, after that day, I realized that if this was what freedom and democracy looked like, I wanted no part of it, none whatsoever. I then refused to fire my weapon, and at people, I'd fire my weapon to provide the illusion that I was firing my weapon. I would fire it into the rooftops or into abandoned cars on the side of the road, and I made sure that every single one of my soldiers did the same thing. I was in charge of weapons squad, which was the gunners in all of the trucks. and I made them fire their weapons into the ground, and that in turn got me into a lot of trouble in Iraq. They weren't too happy with that. I got beat up a little bit, and which was okay. I was fine with that. I was then placed into. I actually asked to be seen by mental health because I couldn't cope with what I had been seeing in Iraq, and I was berated and I was told to get the sand out of my vagina, and to be a soldier, and I couldn't, that I was going to be charged with malingering if I went to see mental health. So, like a good little soldier in the image that I wanted to portray to them so that I wouldn't be berated anymore, roger that, sir, and I went back to my job. Well, they did not like the fact that I wouldn't have any of my soldiers fire their weapons, and so they put me in the second vehicle as a driver. And the second vehicle was the vehicle that got hit by the most IEDs. And I got hit 3 times while I was in Iraq. The first 2 knocked me out, and the third one broke my back. And so I was sent home from Iraq. And after healing, the Army gave me a Chapter 517, which was stating that all of my injuries were pre-existing before I joined the military. My PTSD, my traumatic brain injury, my injuries to my arm, my back injuries, and the injuries to my leg were all pre-existing. So I went through, because I was first in the Navy, I went through Navy basic training with all this. Then I went to the Army infantry basic training with all this, Rangers, all of that, with a broken back. So it's very possible. So, and you know what? At the time, I was okay with that. When I got blown up, I wasn't angry. I was not angry. In a sense, I was relieved because not only did my unit put me in those positions of danger, I started putting myself in those positions of danger. I started making myself sniper bait whenever I was up onto checking for weapons on a big rig. Just find myself standing up there with no battle rattle on whatsoever, no IBA. And I think kind of I don't want to be here, and I can't live with what I was seeing and what I was seeing every night when I closed my eyes. So you take that video, the collateral murder video, and what you see is grainy black and white film. What I see is full vivid color every night that I close my eyes. And there's many more incidents like that, and that was not one of the worst incidents that I had been in because those children actually survived. And that's what our soldiers are seeing every night when they close their eyes. That's why 23 veterans commit suicide every day. 23. It's not because we're doing great things for God and country, it's because we're being asked to do horrible things, and when we get home, we have nowhere to turn. I had no idea about the peace movement. It was so well hidden from me in the military that I had no idea about courage to resist or any of these other. But when I got home, I started trying to search out media outlets to tell my story and to release the videos of detainee abuse that I had taken. I had started taking videos when I was in Iraq and pictures and stuff of all the things that were going on because I felt somebody needed to see this, Here we are taking men and treating them like dogs and laughing at them as we cut them with knives and stuff, and we're supposed to be the good guys. And so I called like KWCH and stuff like that, and I always got, yeah, we'll get back to you. Never did. And then I actually searched on Facebook and found the Wichita Peace and Social Justice Center, and I believe Janice was one of the first people I spoke to, and they've been behind me 100% since day one, and for that I'm grateful, even when nobody was behind me. And but I still live with the cries of the children every night, the moans of agony from the men who were dying on the ground, who were not our enemies. I smell the smells, and I have PTSD extremely bad, and I feel sorry for my family, but my family doesn't feel sorry for my family. it's weird because they stand behind me no matter what, and I have those times where I don't even know who I am, and I hide a lot from my family because I don't like accepting that they love the person that they see when I can't. And that's why I do what I do. I travel around the country and I speak to children in high schools. Some high schools, I'm stepping outside my comfort bubble because it's really easy to sit here and talk to and preach to the choir. But when you go into a place that is full of kids who know nothing but, like I go speak to ROTCs. Yeah. Oh, you better believe it. I had, some schools have welcomed me. Some schools have kicked me out. I've snuck into schools. I have, and that's what we have to do, because what we're doing right now is we're not making any changes with the people who are in the military now, because they're already lost. They're already lost. They already have that hero hat on. It was even hard for me to take that hero hat off when I came home, because you're getting patted on the butt by preachers saying, hey, you're doing a great thing for God and country. And so you're sitting there going, really? And you try to speak out and you get berated by everybody. Like, oh, you're so unpatriotic, you're un-American, you don't love your country. Well, no, I'm doing this because I do love my country. And so I go into high schools, and last year I did 9 high schools in 4 days in LA. In 3 days, sorry. 9 high schools in 3 days. And it was hard. It was real hard. It was draining. I showed the film Incident in New Baghdad. I don't know if anybody knows of that here. A director named James Spione contacted me shortly after the video release and wanted to get my take on film. So he made a film, Incident in New Baghdad, which was me speaking about what had happened that day and since. And it got nominated for an Oscar. And so I went to the Academy Awards last year with my wife. We got to walk the red carpet and hang out, with all the big people and stuff. And I felt really, really awkward being there. It seemed like a really cool thing to do until I got there. I almost got into a fight with Nick Nolte. He disrespected my wife. What can I do? My wife went up to him and was like, hey, I really admire you and your movies. I love the movies that you're in. He's like, said something to her. What'd you say to my wife? Hurt her feelings, and you just don't hurt my wife's feelings. And so we stayed there, and when it wasn't so much that I wanted to win the Academy Award, because I didn't. It was really the fact that it just got the recognition that people are actually paying attention, that people were paying attention to what was going on. And I left way early in the program. I didn't stay the whole program. Me and my wife walked home from LA in our tux and in our formal gown, and she wasn't very happy about that. But we also won the Tribeca Film Fest and everything else. I mean, the film has won a lot of awards. But with that goes that people are paying attention. It's reaching people that it normally wouldn't. And I just got back from Germany not too long ago. Me and my wife were asked to come out, and the children from the van had sent me a message, and it was in a video. And they videoed me and my family sitting there at home. They said, we've got something for you to watch, and I hadn't have any idea what it would be. So they had me and my entire family sitting there, and they turned on this video, and it was the kids. And they said that they remembered me, that the little girl, she's striving to become a doctor so that she can help people. And the boy, he's got a lot of injuries, but he's doing good in school, and they wanted to thank me and say that I'm forever in their memories. And that was very touching for me. But I think that it was very intimate for my family, because it's something that I speak about a lot within my family. When my kids complain about something, I'm like, you have no right to complain about, you don't have enough chocolate on your ice cream, because, which they never really understood and stuff. And they see me at my best and they see me at my worst. And my family's very understanding. My kids, they're very wise beyond their age. They know, well, when Dad's like that, it's not my dad, it's somebody else. And in a sense, they're right. But yeah, so that's why I go to high schools, is because that's how we're going to end this. That's how we're going to end the wars. You'd be surprised at how many kids are receptive to this, that really they had no idea about what the war was really like. And here's the thing is I've offered for recruiters to come and debate me in high schools. Debate me. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to debate you, all right. And then they never show up. So that's sometimes a good thing, because it can be pretty heated. But I have hundreds and hundreds of letters that students have sent me at home, who have since not joined the military, who were in a delayed entry program in the military, who since resigned from that, who have talked friends and family members out of joining the military. And each time I get one of those letters, it's amazing to me that just me, everyone says, what can one person do? Well, one person can do a hell of a lot.
That's right.
Because and I think that's where our focus should be on, is stopping our youth from joining the military. My daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, who I could not get into a Kansas high school by sneaking in, this is not going to happen, got me into Heights High last year. Got me into Heights High, and I spoke to, how many classes, Tammy? It's like 4 or 5 classes. A couple hundred students about the military. And since then, 3 people who were in delayed entry programs or in ROTC quit and resigned. That's people whose parents are in the military went home and had debates with their parents. I'm not sure that teacher still has her job, but if my 17-year-old daughter can do it, anybody can. And she talks to anybody she can about it, and for the longest time I thought my 17-year-old daughter was just dim-witted. She doesn't like to look at the news or anything else like that. She likes to live in her own bubble. And she surprised me with this, because just because she doesn't talk about it doesn't mean she's not paying attention. And that goes to prove that children, just because they're not talking about it or they don't seem like they're paying attention, they really are. They're sponges and they're picking up everything. And I'm thankful for that, because while I go out and I speak to everybody else's children, many times I've forgotten about my own. And for me to come home and to see that my children are following behind my footsteps as well, that's a huge thing for me. And she wanted to be here tonight, but I needed a babysitter. But yes, struggling for peace for me means a lot more than bumper stickers and bonfires and preaching to our own choir. It means getting out of our comfort zone. It means going to places that we normally wouldn't. It means going to schools like Cape and Mount Carmel and stuff like that, or going out front, not even necessarily being on the grounds, but being out front, because there's a recruiting office right across from Capen. And there's Starbucks, which all the students are going to go to Starbucks, and there's the recruiting center right there. That's where we need to be. we need to be out there encouraging them not to join into these wars, because when this war started, my nephew is now in this war. And I tried everything I can to get him not to join. And here I am getting all these other kids not to join, and my family's joining up, and because I forget about my own family sometimes. And but one thing I found out, just like my kids, is he's been listening to me. And he actually got in trouble with his commanding officer because his commanding officer told him, "Don't worry, you'll get your chance to shoot people in the face." And he said, "I'm not shooting anybody, sir, unless they fire at me." And he said, "What did you say to me?" He said, "I'm not shooting anybody." And he got in trouble, but he said it's worth it. And also there were some soldiers in his unit who were dogging his uncle, who were saying bad things about me. And he turned around and to a sergeant, and he was a private at the time, and was like, "You're not going to talk about my uncle that way, you punk." But yeah, in order for us to strive for peace in a better way, is, I think, for us to just 100% go after the youth. I don't want to see anybody else living their lives the way that we do. I don't want to see anybody else take their lives. I actually, on my wife's birthday, attempted suicide. I put a gun in my mouth and was about to kill myself when my wife walked in. Right before I did that, because I have to live with what I see every day, and I refused to take the VA's drugs. They had me on 13 medications at one time, and it made me a zombie. And I think that I was more apt to killing then than I was without the medication. But I wrote a poem that I'll share with you guys right before I attempted suicide. It's called "That's When You'll Be." And it goes, when your prayers for mercy seem to fall on deaf ears, when the agony is so intense you can no longer shed tears, when your face shows the age well beyond your own years, that's when you'll be. When sleep is the enemy, afraid of what you'll awaken to be, when just leaving your home seems to be a harrowing feat, when images of dead innocence seem all that you see, that's when you'll be. When the lies you once believed now poison any chance of a new start, when the anger is so unbearable it feels like your mind's being ripped apart, when knowing your family fears you and choose to closely guard their hearts, that's when you'll be. When your only chance at survival rely on people with blank stares, when the prescriptions to help you sleep at night only increase your nightmares, when it seems you're all you have and even you've lost all self-care, that's when you'll be. When your shaking voice makes words not quite come out, when you reach for your handgun from every odd noise in your house, to when that handgun becomes your prescription, then you place it in your mouth. That's when you'll be like me. Thank you.